Hello and welcome to Run Talk with Dom.
Hello.
And me, Ollie, co-founders of Run Riot. This podcast features conversations with runners talking about what running is release means for them.
Each episode contains frank discussions about personal endeavours, mental well-being, physical challenges. Basically, loads of good content related to running.
So today is exciting as today we welcome our first Run Talk guest from outside of the UK, from beyond our UK shores, namely in Tokyo in Japan. And we're going to be talking all things Ekiden. And if you don't know what that is, keep listening, stay tuned in as we're going to get to that. But first, I wanted to introduce our guest today. And today I'm speaking to Jeremy Cools, who arrived in Tokyo, a couple of decades ago now, and found himself slowly fascinated by Japanese running culture. Jeremy's also a writer. So if you don't mind, Jeremy, before we get going, I'm going to actually read a little bit of your own words to introduce you properly.
Are you?
And I'm actually literally going to read it. So Jeremy says, I came into running not as a lifelong athlete, but as someone searching for balance and mental health. Over time, running became much more than exercise. It opened a door into a culture I've been immersed in for years. From the streets of Tokyo to university tracks to the Ekiden, I've seen firsthand how running in Japan is shaped by teamwork, discipline, and respect. Well, welcome, Jeremy. That's a good introduction, I think. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you for that introduction. I was wondering about, how to introduce myself, but I'm glad that you did it for me. So I appreciate it. But it's good to be here, Ollie. Thank you.
Brilliant. So, like I say, we're going to get to Ekiden. And for all those listeners who don't know what that is, we will get to that. But I kind of wanted to start at the start, funnily enough, and focus on that phrase here of searching for balance and mental health. So let's start there. You've not always been a runner. Let's talk about what sort of kickstarted your interest.
Yeah, absolutely. It was basically kind of hitting, I imagine like many people coming to my 40s and realizing that the lifestyle I had just wasn't where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was powered by drinking far too much. And again, life can be stressful a lot of time. And I was just kind of struggling a lot and using alcohol as a way to get through life. And obviously
which many of us do. And it's funny, you talk to a lot of people who start running in that kind of phase of life. It is a bit of a replacing some less good habits with some much better types of habits, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it was very much like that. And my mental health was in a very bad way. And obviously that and alcohol don't go together very well. So I came to a bit of a crossroads. I remember it distinctly, Christmas Day, 2019. I probably hit the sort of lowest I'd ever been. And it just became a huge choice. Okay, I've got to stop. I've got to change. And alcohol was the first thing that I had to let go of. Something I never thought I could do, actually, when it becomes such a part of your life. And if anyone's been to Japan as well, they'll know it is everywhere. It's not the same kind of pub kind of culture, but it's permeates everything you do. And when you give up, you can see it, all on the billboards, on the trains, like 4:30 on a Friday. If you put the TV on, there's a beer advert, and suddenly you kind of see how it all works when you're on the other side. But anyway, so I did have a sort of mental breakdown really, and I had to get rid of alcohol to then have that kind of clarity as to what to do next. And again, like many people, I went to speak to a therapist and go through that. But one of the big things was, and again, I'm sure lots of people can relate, once you give up alcohol, if you've been overly dependent on it, you suddenly find yourself with a lot of time that you never knew you had, that somehow, obviously just disappeared. And for me, I'm more of a morning person. Disappeared in hangovers and early doors and wasted Saturday afternoons and all that stuff. So I would wake up early anyway, but instead of waking up and feeling rough as hell, it's like, okay, well, I've got a bit of time before my daughter wakes up or I need to get ready for school or what have you. What do I do with that time? And I started thinking, okay, well, I'll go to the gym, I'll do some running, and basically just started from there. I enjoyed it, running a little bit, running not fast or not distances or anything like that, but it just made me feel better. It just made me feel better. And basically that just kind of snowballed from there, where I started having some structure around it, starting understanding a little bit more about how it all works. And there's lots of races over here as well. So Park Run was there.
When did that moment, sorry to cut across you, when did that moment of kind of doing it as an individual, I suppose, pursuit and thinking I need to do something positive, when did the kind of more team aspect or running with other people and this idea of it being something you can do with others, when did that kind of start to come into being?
That was relatively I think for the first few years I would be by myself and quite happily do it by myself. And I still do to a certain extent. But around 2 years ago, I decided to join a team because I was interested in what that was like. I'd never joined one before. I didn't know how it all worked, and I couldn't really imagine.
So is this a running club? Because obviously, running club culture is huge in the UK now. Was it a running club? Was it a group of people at work? What was it?
It was a running club in Tokyo. So basically, I'm a big fan of. We'll get onto the Ekiden, but there are a lot of basically Japan's most kind of well-known runners will have come out of the Ekiden, and there was a particular guy, one of the mountain gods, if anyone knows their kind of Ekiden history, that's someone who performed above and beyond on the basically the mountain stage. Anyway, he started his own running club, and that was a really big deal to have someone like him, run a club for general kind of runners like me, and you have to apply to it, and you have to say, why you want to do it, and all this sort of stuff, and you get chosen. So I just found that was the sort of process because I didn't know, so I applied for it, and I got accepted into the club, and then that really changed everything because that was running with a lot of people with a lot of experience, and again, Japan is very obsessive about many things, but very obsessive about running, and to be honest, to the point where it's a very intense. Sometimes you struggle to have a normal conversation without talking about marathon times and goals and interval sessions and stuff. But I met all sorts of people through that club that has sort of shaped my kind of journey over the last couple of years. But I enjoyed it, running together and running with others. You can do more than you can do by yourself, certainly with the harder sessions. So that became sort of a regular part of my life that then sort of moved beyond just the club nights into other areas because you kind of meet lots of people that connect that way. So
we've said the word Ekiden at least 10 times, and I'm sure
maybe 11.
There are a number of people who won't know what that is. And to be honest, I have a general sense of Ekiden, but let's go kind of back to first principles as to kind of what is that, what's the format, what's the culture around it, and kind of we can kind of then move into a little bit how your life has changed as a result of your involvement with it.
Absolutely. So the Ekiden is essentially it's a long distance relay, and it can differ in age group and length and all of these kind of things. There's many different varieties of it. But the serious Ekidens basically start at junior high school level, moving up to high school, to university, where it kind of peaks, and then into the corporate world. And the corporate world is very Japanese. And what I think fascinates a lot of people, including myself, is that you can be an office worker essentially as a sort of paid athlete, basically. So you go to the office, but your job is to train and perform for the team.
Oh, wow.
Many different kind of companies
like a sort of US scholarship kind of system. You can be brilliant at basketball or American football and go to a really Ivy League school, can't you? Is it that? But in the office place, that kind of thing. That's certainly the case with the university level. But the corporate world is it blows my mind because I was talking to someone the other day who was in charge of one of the women's corporate teams, one of the sort of a makeup company or something. They're all sort of strange companies that run these Ekiden teams. And he was saying basically all the women, they work in the morning, because I thought it was just they're an employee, but basically they're on the track, but they go to the office, do their desk work or whatever, and then in the afternoon they train for the team. Wow. So it just blows my mind. You've got all these kind of sub 15-minute 5K runners in the office, goodness knows what they do every day. But yeah, so it's a very distinctive part of the culture is to have these corporate Ekiden teams. It sounds kind of obscure though, in the sense of, if I put a UK lens on it, obviously I'm into running and you get a lot of cross-country events and, other types, team events and things like that here, but they feel quite off radar in terms of being a mainstream sport. But I think the point about Ekiden that's really hard to get across is it's just huge in Japan, isn't it? As in, it is a mainstream sport. It's something that a huge proportion of the population watch over the winter in particular. I think are some of the big events, at least in the men's events. So yeah, do you want to talk around that a bit?
Yeah, sure. I can tell you that this weekend there were, I think, 2 or 3 on the TV I watched. Pretty much every weekend there is an Ekiden of sorts on the TV. And that could be, like I say, down to sort of really young level, to the huge ones, which is January the 2nd and 3rd, which is the Hakone Ekiden, which is for men's university teams. The corporate men's is the day before. I was talking to a kind of a runner who was in that race, and he was telling me that he'd also run Hakone because you would do to get to corporate level. And he was telling me it basically feels like a starter to the university one. So it's not a case that everything sort of rises, in terms of popularity. It basically peaks at university level. And then when you get to corporate, it kind of drops off a little bit. But we're talking, everyone would know what it is, but everyone would have different understanding of the nuances of it and how deep it goes. But it's used also as races, but for the universities, for the teams, and for the schools, but also as a promotional aspect as well. There was one for I don't know if it got much traction in the UK, but for the expo, the World Expo that was in Osaka last year, as a promotional tool, they had an Ekiden basically from wherever it was to the expo site. And so it was interesting for me that they would use that as a tool to bring people together, because people would want to watch it and people have a positive association with the Ekiden. So, and because the expo, there was various things going on with it. So I thought that was an interesting thing. They would use that as a specific tool to promote it.
If you've got brands putting money into these things, that means that there's interest, doesn't it? But break it down again. So in terms of, so obviously it sounds like there's multiple different formats, but the general sentiment is it's a set number of individuals, a set of legs, 10K, 5K. How does it kind of work in that respect?
Sure. And I realize I'm not explaining it very well, probably because it's quite difficult to explain. But say, for example, I'm going to start with the women's because that's what I feel more strongly about. But say the women's university level, and they will basically run between maybe 3K and 10K. So there's quite a vast difference in distance. And usually the team, depending on the race, is either maybe 6 people or 7. So it's that kind of level. And within each leg, you get specific types of runners. So if you get a 3K leg, you put your fastest runner on there. The 10K, often you'll see either runners from outside Japan, for example, the kind of some of the Kenyan runners, for example, or the sort of older runners and things like that. There's hill stages and things. So there's a lot of tactics involved with it, which is quite fascinating. But they say for the men's, the big one being the Hakone Ekiden, as I mentioned, on the 3rd of January. Basically, it's around about a half marathon each. And so this is why there's 10 legs on that one over 2 days. So 5 legs a day, running from Tokyo down to Hakone, which is the kind of onsen hot spring town. The final leg being basically a half marathon up a mountain. And then the next day they come back again, basically. So over 200K across the 2 days. And that is, Hakone Ekiden is what people think about when they hear the word Ekiden for various reasons, but one being that it's over the New Year holiday. And during the New Year, because Christmas we work here and things like that, it's a little bit different, but usually break up maybe on the 30th or something like that. So the second and third people will be in their family homes a lot of the time. So they'll go out to a lot of people from Tokyo will go back to the countryside where they're from. And basically there's nothing much else to do than plonk yourself in front of the TV and watch this kind of 10 hour.
So it's the equivalent of watching Star Wars with the kids over Christmas period in the UK.
It's very much along those lines with a bit of, it's almost like the Grand National thrown in terms of because you know how like people don't watch horse racing all year, but they'll watch the Grand National and they might look in the newspaper and choose, the colours or the numbers or something like that. So it has that level of consciousness in terms of people don't necessarily watch it all year.
What interests me, I personally think of running as quite a kind of individual pursuit for myself, I mean, but even more broadly, it tends to be thought of in those terms. In terms of events, they tend to be quite individual in my head anyway. And what interests me is it's a group effort, tactical, like you say, really interesting. I think I have spotted there are a couple of events in the UK now, aren't there, Ekiden events, but it's very peripheral, isn't it? So I wonder, do you think it's going to become something outside of Japan, or do you think it's something that's uniquely Japanese, I suppose, in terms of the interest levels that are there?
It's a great question. With the UK Ekiden and the guys there, they're doing a great job. They're in their 3rd year now, I believe, this year. And what's interesting about this year's UK Ekiden is that for the first couple of years, it was basically anyone could join. They needed the schools there and the corporate teams. But this year was the first year that they've actually put a limit on it, and you had to get a specific time to be able to join. I think, like an average of 16 minutes over 5K, like pretty, decent.
Okay. I was thinking I might try a team, but that's put me out of the equation.
Well, I mean, we don't have to. I mean, I'll happily join your team. We can plod on at the back. I think it's everyone's kind of welcome in that regard. But I think that the concept and what Anna's doing with the UK Ekiden is channeling very much sort of the Japanese spirit of it. I think what comes into play is that the level of interest I doubt will ever get there, simply because of the way things are set up. And it just, I can't see a case where the UK would be sort of watching running races for 10 hours.
No,
I'd like
I
to
think
be
running
wrong.
running in general is just, it doesn't have that popular sport level of interest, does it? I mean, it has a lot of interest, and there, it's blowing up, isn't it, globally? But in terms of a sport that people watch on and engage with on TV, it's just not there, I don't think, in the UK. I wanted to move us on a little bit to you mentioned it already, that you're specifically and particularly interested in women's Ekiden. And in fact, I think, are you not the kind of only non-Japanese member of a women's Ekiden training club in a university? Just delve into that a little bit.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, that sounds really weird that there's a 45-year-old man hanging about. So I need to sort of clarify that a little bit.
Please do.
But yeah, it's probably best. But essentially, when I started writing about Japanese running, because my job is in writing and translating, and I wanted to write about Ekiden because, of course, that's the source of running culture over here. And originally I started writing about the men because that's what everyone does, and that's because what's most prominent in the media and things like that. And so I thought, I can't just work on the outside. I need to sort of get kind of in with one of the teams, but it's notoriously difficult
proper
to do that.
journalistic approach. You wanted to get in.
All that sort of stuff, try and force your way in. And it's very, very difficult over here because Ekiden teams are notoriously closed, not necessarily because they're, I don't know, in a negative way. It's just, that's just how they're built. They're kind of self-sustaining ecosystems in a way, and they don't need me, basically. But I watched a women's Ekiden race. And again, because this was quite new to me because of a connection, I've got a 9-year-old daughter, her school and the kind of university connected to that, blah, blah, blah. And I watched that. Look, this is brilliant. It's a much shorter race than the men's one, which means, you're kind of more involved. Races within races the whole time. The level was relatively similar. So you right to the end, there's the jeopardy. Whereas in the men's, a lot of the time it's done a few hours before the race is finished, just because of the nature of how the top teams hoover up all the talent. And so I thought, okay, at least I've got a connection here. My daughter goes to that sort of school. Maybe they'll entertain the idea, because I'd contacted all these places and got nothing back, And I said, oh yeah, can I get it? And they responded, and they were in a sort of arm's length, wary kind of Japanese way. But it was like,
how are you?
Yeah, but we'd sort of entertained that. So I went in there, did my best sort of presentation of because I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do. I just knew that to be able to write about the culture properly, I needed to kind of be much closer to precisely. And lo and behold, this was a year ago, and slowly, as is the way in Japan, I managed to go to one session, and they said, oh, would you like to come back and do another one? So, oh, yeah, great. And then, it became a sort of regular thing.
So when you say a session, you're going and training, yes? You're going doing VO2 max sessions and intervals and things like that, are you?
And training. Yeah, exactly. So I turn up and I wouldn't know what the session was. So I'm going there thinking, oh God, I don't know if I can do this. But luckily, how it works with Ekiden, at least what I'm, have learned, is that one, not everyone's the same level. So you've got 4 years, because university is 4 years over here. And some of the first years are really quick, and they're in the main team. But generally, you've got a team about 20 to 30, maybe more. But you've only got 6 or 7 main runners in the key races. So you get a lot of people who are perhaps not as fast, but might get there or might not get there. I'm sure it's the same as many sports teams. So I could at least run with those. But also, the nature of long distance running is there's a lot of the 0.01% sessions, basically the kind of incremental ones, where and you're doing it for a specific purpose. You're not trying to kill yourself, and that is huge, actually, because what I really learned from being in there, and basically, if we did a 4K session, then there might be 4 of us. We might do 1K each. So one person's on the front, does their 1K, and then slowly the second person comes in and takes that and leads it, and I've done that as well, which is really nerve wracking. I don't know if you've ever paced before, but like when you've got people relying on you. No, well, I'm not. And I'm there because is this watch working? I'm going there, run it. And then I'm getting called from the back. No, you're too slow. It's like, oh, right. And then too fast. It's like, oh, no, I shouldn't be here. But like being within that group, feeling those changeovers when sort of people, it's so smooth. Everyone's helping each other. And the biggest thing I found was just the lack of ego, because I can imagine, maybe this is being just man from the UK or growing up the way I did, there's no way we'll be able to do a session and stay at that same speed. Like someone is going to go off the front, but there's none of that at all.
Yeah. It's a proper
very
team
controlled.
effort. Sorry to cut across. Talk about
please.
that changeover bit. What is that? So, someone does the first leg. What is the format of the changeover? Is it a baton? What is it? What happens?
So in the format, in my sort of bad analogy, then it's more just changing over in terms of someone leading the pulling the group round. But in terms of Ekiden, rather than the sort of old school baton, which we probably had at primary school. I don't know if you did relays at primary school, or notorious watching it on TV when the UK team used to drop the baton the whole time. The world champs. But they use a tasuki or a sash, which you might have seen, and there's a real sort of skill to that, and basically kind of take it off and pass it on. Mm-hmm. So it's very, it's full of symbology and all that sort of stuff. But I tell you,
it sounds much more arty than a baton, doesn't it? It feels much more Japanese to me.
There's a certain element to it, but it was quite funny because I was talking to the kantoku, or the head coach of the women's team, and this stuff's gold as well. Like, because once they trust you that you're part of the team or whatever, they give you all sorts of information. And he's I don't know how old he is, older chap, but he ran Hakone back in the day, and he was saying basically he was on the 9th leg out of 10, and basically when he took the tasuki from the runner before, it was just absolutely drenched with sweat.
Yeah.
And like no one ever tells you that, because it's like a sacred thing. It's like this God, this one thing. We said it was horrible, like big answer. So that's the kind of reality of it as well.
So where is your role now within the team, or is it still evolving? So, I mean, obviously you're doing this podcast, sort of championing Ekiden and women's Ekiden and writing articles. Have you got a kind of more formalized role there? Where's it moving to?
So that's moving again, like I've probably said a few times, like it's so slow, and it's not their fault. It's just the nature of it. Yeah. Exactly. That's the word I should use. So they're talking about, and I was hoping by the time we had this chat, Ollie, that something would be fixed, but not quite yet. But they're talking about making a position for me, which would be very rare. Just to clarify again, not to be running with the girls' team, but as some kind of advocate or support with promotion, because the promotion aspect I find quite fascinating, because there's no Ekiden teams now that are really promoting themselves, certainly in English and Japanese. And from my sort of vantage point, where I see there's such an interest in Japanese running culture, growing interest in Ekiden as well, yet no real outlet for it beyond times and races and things like that. There's not really many stories going on out there. So I feel like I could probably play a little part in changing that. But also what I'm seeing is, through social media outside of Japan and through articles that I'm starting to read, that, what is Ekiden and things like that. There's a lot of the focus on the men. If you see any social media, the imagery will be the Hakone Ekiden, which is certain university selection of universities from a certain area, and they're all men. And my fear, for the want of a better word, is that as Ekiden grows, people will start to have this impression that it's all about the men, and yet the women train as hard, they sacrifice as much, they're up against more, in fact, because they get very little media attention and very little spotlight. The brands don't care as much, quite frankly. So I feel, with a connection with the girls as well, now I know them quite well, and I've seen the races and I know how passionate they are and everything. It makes me want to do what I can to try and change that narrative.
Why is that though? Why do you think, and I'm sure this is a very long and involved answer potentially and nuanced, but why do you think men's Ekiden gets all the attention and women's is sort of second fiddle to it? And I think you had an anecdote, if you don't mind saying it on air, you had an anecdote about contacting one of the main sort of journalists in men's Ekiden, and that interaction was quite eye-opening for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's keep it simple. The reason is Hakone, basically. And Hakone is, like I say, the biggest Ekiden, to the point where people would think that's the only Ekiden there is. And it's all men, and it's gone over 100 years. Your grandparents watched it, and your parents went to your grandparents' house to watch it, and you watched it. So it's handed down through generations. So that's kind of, I guess, inevitably why. But with the women, still started 50 years ago, but it just doesn't get that level of attention. And the anecdote you're talking about, I was researching a piece that I'm very lucky to be writing about women's Ekiden, and I had my own experiences with the girls at Tamagawa and some other connections. But the more people you can speak to, the better. I thought. I reached out to a journalist who I knew and said, "Can you introduce me to a Teams or something?" Because, like I say, it's quite difficult to do. 2-sentence reply: Women's Ekiden isn't interesting. Doesn't have the same Ekiden spirit as the men.
Wow.
That's what he said.
That says a lot, doesn't it? Yeah.
It says so much. And my first thought was, well, one, I didn't ask for your opinion on it. Like I was asking if you could, and then it's like, okay, there's something deeper here then, because if that person with his reach and his influence feels like, and he's open to saying that out loud, then there's obviously a big issue here. So that kind of fired me up a bit more. It's like, okay, who's he to say that there's, it's got more spirit? I've seen girls like training in the pouring rain, like and not the coach making them. The coach is like, oh God, can we go home now? Like they're running around in lashing rain in the races. They, everything to the point where they can't stand up. There's people crawling on the floor just to get over the line. Like, how dare you, say things like that. So that's kind of fired me up really to do what I can to tell those stories a bit more and to try and raise that awareness, and not in a men bashing way. Like, I'm really keen to say that it's not, I'm anti the men, because I enjoy those races, but I think there should be better parity, and I think there could be, but it just needs a bit of a push.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of going to be quite a key player in that potentially. And let's broaden the conversation a little bit. In our pre-chat a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about kind of running culture in general, and just the fact that running's become so much more popular than it once was. And as I said earlier, you've got these, explosion of running clubs. You've got brands kind of climbing over one another to kind of associate themselves with running clubs. And I'd just like to get your kind of Japanese kind of take on that. What have you experienced in the last few years in terms of that running culture, but also brands and how they're kind of approaching runners in Japan?
Sure. I mean, I'll throw that back at you after as well, from your position, having your own wonderful brand. But yeah, it's certainly changed a lot. There's been a huge shift, even within the last 2 years, I suppose, where I've been really sort of deep into the culture and noticing everything, and obviously through social media and stuff like that. But what I'm seeing is, and this is, I'm interested to know what's happening in the UK, but Japan, in terms of marketing anyway, which is part of my sort of other sort of day job, is there's a very sort of cookie cutter approach to kind of promotion. And basically one brand will do something and then you'll see something very, very similar by someone else. And it's not necessarily seen as a negative thing, if you see what I mean. It just seems like, just maybe it's risk averse. I'm not sure. There's probably a deeper logic to it that I'm not aware of. But what I'm finding is that there's a handful of influencers, and they tend to sort of crop up with one brand's new shoe, and at the event where they'll be doing, I don't know, indoor treadmill races, that sort of thing. And then the next day they'll be promoting another brand shoe.
Yeah, interesting.
In the same way, with the same sort of enthusiasm and stuff like that. And I remember, because with all the shoes coming out now and all of the new kind of, colorways and what have you, it's a lot more of these things happening. So it's more obvious to me. So there's very much a sense of using sort of similar patterns, which as a consumer, I always feel a little bit uncomfortable with, to be honest. But I am noticing that they're using run clubs more nowadays. So rather than individuals, they're kind of using named running clubs, which obviously makes sense because you've got a sort of broader demographic and usually men and women as well. So that's the kind of trend I've seen in the last 6 months or so, kind of shifting in that direction. But again, it's always the same ones. So you've got some guys running in this shoe this week, and then they're on a billboard for another shoe the next week. So I think it could do with a jolt of energy. It could do with something brand new coming in, and there's an opportunity there to do it. But what are you seeing though on kind of the UK side? I
think broadly similar actually, and it's definitely, look, any kind of cultural phenomenon that happens, brands are going to try and piggyback on those, aren't they? And I think that's not a bad thing, in the sense that it's great that running is exploding, continues to explode, and that just seems to be a side effect that of course you're going to get brands trying to get involved. The running club and brand association is definitely a kind of phenomenon over here. And for Run Riot, we've had a lot of debate about kind of what we do and don't want to do when it comes to run clubs. And what we don't want to do is cynically create a brand run club, say come and join the Run Riot Run Club, because there are enough of them out there already, and people are already kind of living the culture of run clubs. But we are interested in associating with those who kind of, there are lots of different shapes of run clubs, aren't there? They're the people who are all about performance and all about those track days and doing the tempo sessions and just hitting it hard. Nothing wrong with that at all. That isn't really us, we don't think. We've got this tagline, running is release, and that is really meaningful to us in terms of the going right back to your kind of beginning in running. That mental well-being aspect is really important to us. So we're keen to kind of associate with run clubs that fit our mold, or we fit their mold. Do you see what I mean? And speak to inclusion, speak to the idea of running as a tool for mental well-being, and not just getting your sub 25k. But yes, it's a good thing. I'm going to put a positive slant on brands trying to get involved, because that's just a reflection of the fact that it's a phenomenon, isn't it? It's a growing phenomenon.
So I'm looking forward to one brand who's gonna go the opposite way and sort of support the women, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But it'd be interesting to see who does that.
Brands in Japan, I must thank you. Awkwardly, we're both wearing the same Run Riot crew neck today, which had I known, I would have worn a different color. But I want to thank you for being our first customer in Japan. It's quite a distance to get that over to you, isn't it? But I'm hoping you're enjoying the kit.
Oh, absolutely. It was funny, Ollie, because I saw on your social media some reviews, and someone wrote about this, that, what did they say? Something like something you unexpectedly wear every day, or I can't remember what the line is. I wish I could.
Yeah.
That's exactly like me. Like, you just kind of just throw it on, not throw it, but it's just so comfortable, and I love wearing it, and the base layer is brilliant. I wore that the other day. I did a park run the other day. It's quite weird. I don't know what it's like in the UK at the moment, but it's kind of cold over here, but warm when the sun's on you, cold in the shade, that sort of thing.
It's been raining for the whole of 2026, basically. So let's not talk about the weather here.
I apologize. It's been beautiful over here, just chilly. But yeah, that was awesome. So that and the hat. So really, really love the stuff. And you didn't pay me to do that, by the way. This isn't an ad. Yeah. This is a genuine.
This isn't an ad. We're going to clip that and put that on socials. Have you worn it at your a running club yet?
I haven't yet. I'm looking forward to wearing it down with the Ekiden team. They've been on Gashku, it's called. It's the kind of intensive camps. So basically the way Ekiden works is, and this again, it's another reason why it's difficult to enter these places, because the whole year is set out. It's all fixed. And early February is warm weather training. So they'll all go down to Okinawa, tropical islands in the south. So they've been down there for a little while. So I'll catch up with them again soon. But I'm certainly looking forward to showing them all the new gear.
I feel we're coming to the end of our time somewhat, actually, but I wanted to kind of leave it you to have the last word, really. So you're to summarize, you weren't a runner until what, 5, 6, 7 years ago, really, not much of a runner, and it's slowly kind of seeped into you, not just running, but kind of, I think, Japanese running and running culture. And it feels like you're also at a point of, ramping it up even more potentially and having a slightly more formal role within the university. What is your kind of hope for Ekiden and women's Ekiden more specifically in the future?
Sure. I'll just take it back one step beyond that, before that.
Sure.
So someone asked me once why I ran when I'd been sort of doing it a little while. And someone said, why do you run? And I found that very difficult to answer, first of all. I'm sure like many people do. And for me, it was hard to explain, because it was such an effect on my mental health, and, really being in a very low place that could have gone in really sort of unpleasant areas. I never lose sight of the fact that the running, I don't want to say it saved my life, because that's too dramatic, but there is an element of that. So, but when someone asked me why I run, my simple answer was, I just have a better day. My day is better when I run than when I don't. It's as simple as that. And I'm not just talking about kind of like health-wise. I'm talking about relationships with work, with my family, with my daughter, with my concentration, just my overall well-being. And so it's that feeling that you get from running, whatever that is, then transfers into everything else. And that's driven my motivation too. I'm more motivated to do this. And reaching out to the Ekiden teams, I wouldn't have done that had I not have had this feeling, because of, self-esteem problems and confidence problems. Like, running has made me feel a bit more confident to be able to do that. So it's not one thing, everything is connected. This wonderful snowball effect you get from running. So I'm going to stay with the running, because I'm not worried about speed and time and breaking records or doing running a marathon in a pair of jeans or whatever that dude did recently. Like,
Yeah.
for me, it's just, I like going out by myself every day because it makes me feel better. And then everything else, there's a positive kind of effect on that. So I hope that I can channel this energy certainly into women's Ekiden as well, and spread that message, spread that narrative, and bring a bit more parity to the sport, and just enjoy kind of being involved in running. And I'm glad to be alive at this time in this generation where running is such a thing, because it's very exciting.
That is a wonderful way to end. And I think kind of from the you took it down to the individual level, which is running is just damn good for you. Some might say running is release. There, let's end on that, because that is
Absolutely
lovely finish. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ollie. Appreciate that.